Hello there, it's Sean Wayland here, and this is a video for Cosc 360 assignment progress video. As you may be aware, I'm a musician, and that's an Oberheim Matrix 1000, and that's a Yamaha TX7. And I like musical stuff, so I'm trying to build a game which teaches ear training to students and myself. I use it myself. And the idea behind the game is that the computer randomly generates a melody which you have to guess. And you can make the task more difficult by asking for longer melodies and or including more notes from the chromatic scale in the melodies. So I've set up a website using AWS with a mean stack, and I've gotten this far. I've created this page and the game works, so I'll give you a bit of a look at the game. It's interesting trying to make a video and use a mouth at the same time. You can add your name to chat. And it says hello Will. And if you chat, it says Will says do. The chat was built with socket.io and a bit of Node, and it's running on the AWS server. There's a start new game button at the moment which just clears the username so that you can add the name Sean again to the number of users playing. So you can talk a bit, and in order to play the game, you select some notes from the piano keyboard here, and then you click this button, click me to make a new melody, and you select down here I'll try and move this, you select the number of notes in the game, like that, and then you click on that, and it says I've created a new melody. And then you use this keyboard here to guess the notes, but first you got to listen to them with this button. I couldn't get the melody to just play because it seemed like JavaScript was just spinning multiple threads, so if I asked it to play notes with spaces, it would just play them all at once. And I tried various timing mechanisms, sleeps, other people's bits of code to pause things, but I couldn't get to work, so I just made a button so you can listen to the melody one note at a time. So it's a three note melody. So okay, so I've got perfect pitch, so I think it's this. Right, and then it says you guessed it. And then makes a cash register sound, which is an open source cash register sound, and then there's a bit of a bank down the bottom, and the basic idea of the one player game is just to bankrupt the bank. And there's some silly instructions and a story about, where are they? Story about what the game's all about. So that's as far as I've got at the moment. I'm hoping that in the two-player game that you'll be able to create a game, and then people can join the game with a link with just 2 people in each game, I think. And then in each game, each player will have 10 grand, say, and then they'll be trying to bankrupt the other player. In the game, you get 3 guesses at the melody. So the idea is that players take turn with 3 guesses at a melody. And if they miss, the other player gets the money. If they win, they take the money away from the other player. That's that bit. So I've put the code on GitHub, and it's fairly self-explanatory. Some of these things are not being used, but there's a background there. There's this timer, which I don't use, I don't think. There's these MP3 files which make noises. Audio synth is a very simple bit of code that someone else posted, which just gives you the ability to make noises with JavaScript. So I've just used that. When you press a keyboard button, it makes a noise with that bit of JavaScript. This index.js is from the socket.io example, the chat example basically. It just sets up a socket between whoever logs in, and then it has functions for when messages arrive to the server. And at the moment, it just basically creates users if they create a new user, and then gives them a name, and then if someone sends a message, it gets sent to all sockets. So I need to figure out how to create unique socket addresses, etc. That's that one. Then there's some variables in this vars one, and most of these relate to the gameplay, like an array to store the secret code, and arrays to store people's guesses, etc. There's these sleep functions, but I don't think I used them. That was when I was trying to get the melody to play as a melody, not just one note at a time. And there's also this render, which takes care of most of the actions that happen during the game. Most of them, some of them are in the index.html, but there's this one, check a note. When you play a note, it sees if you've made a correct guess. And what else is there? Oh, one for when you click a white key. So there's 2 keyboards, and they've both got white keys. So the document ID of one keyboard is higher than the other one. So one keyboard you're just using to select notes for the test, and the other keyboard you use to play the notes. So that's sorted out in there. And then most of the code is in this index.html, which is pretty poorly organized, but at the top of it I load the audio files for the sound effects, and then there's a bit of CSS stuff. And I am terrible at laying things out on the page, and that's something I really don't understand properly and need to improve at. That might be a nice lesson, although I assume that's web programming 1, not web programming, advanced web programming, but getting everything to appear and line up properly on the page is a huge problem for me, especially with SVG elements, and things can just cover other things up, and then you can't see things. So I had having great trouble getting everything to appear and look reasonably okay. So then there's a load of various libraries like audio synth, etc. Then at the top of the page there's the various functions for the chat, buttons to send stuff to socket.io, And then this my function, which is pretty poorly named, is the button that creates a secret code, and then a button to generate the instructions, etc, etc. I used a bit of view to store things that was requested. This is a big SVG element for the piano keyboard, and then underneath that is a bit of stuff I tried to animate the dollar bill moving around the page. Wanted to learn how to animate SVG, to learn how to do that. It was a barrel of fun. And then more view elements to display the amount in the bank. A button that creates a new code, sort of starts a new round, if you like. So that's that. Now, let me look at these questions. Copy of sketches. Well, I don't think I need sketches because it's all up there on the website. Example JSON. Now there is a little file, I think, called game object, and I've included a little JSON file. The idea I have at this moment is that the server will store just a game with each player's name and just how much they've got in the bank, a boolean for who has to play next, and that's about it. And the idea is that they just take turns, and the dollar value gets updated, and if the dollar value gets to 0, then someone's declared the winner. Perhaps I don't think I need a game over boolean, because once one of those things is 0, then the thing's basically over. I'm thinking that the buttons on the web page can create games, and you can also delete the current game. And I'm just thinking that the server will store these variables somehow. I don't really know how to use Mongo, but that's the plan. I set up a mean stack, so I'm assuming that I can just store these variables in a big piece of crap on the database, and just every time every time dollars change hands from player to player, then it looks up this persistent storage in the database and sees if the game's won. Perhaps that's a slow way to do it, but that's basically that. And what messages sent between the client server would be include JSON examples? Well, I'm thinking that it's a good question. I'm thinking that what would be sent is just a pretty similar thing of a player name and a dollar amount, plus or minus, gets sent to the server from one player to the next. That's probably it. Probably something similar to that JSON there. I think I'm going to include the progress video in the one thing, or no, I'll stop this and I'll do a progress video.